thank you so much for joining us again on Conversations with Cliff. I am David Evenden, the owner and founder of Standard User Cybersecurity and Standard User Institute. And this is my good friend Cliff Lash, who is the president of Standard User Institute. Hello, Cliff. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing just fine. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yes.
So this Conversations with Cliff webinar series is really focused on answering what a lot of people would call basic questions about information security or cybersecurity, information assurance, if you will, just everything that falls within the category of protecting your cyber-based assets. So, Cliff, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today we're going to talk about just a standard attack that's used on computer systems called the denial of service attack. And we'll also look at the that same one in a larger capacity called distributed denial of service attacks. And then after we talk about those just a little bit, we'll also talk about botnets and zombies, just a little bit.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I'll basically everything we're going to talk about are all sort of interconnected in the same idea of making a specific service or an endpoint unobtainable. You can't access, or rather I should say inaccessible. So really, really the best way to sort of describe that, in my mind, being a father of 3 little kids, is to tell a funny joke. So I'll tell a funny joke real quick. Cliff, knock knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting cow.
It's so stupid. It's dumb. But I'm interrupting your process of saying something, which in the event of me doing that, and if I say it loud enough, you can't hear or communicate with anyone else trying to ask you questions.
Right.
So it's basically that same process. Now imagine that would be a type of if you're able to do it from a single host, which could be difficult as just a straight, let's just say a packet flood where you're flooding a specific host with a bunch of packets. But if you have 500,000 cows saying moo at the same time, now you have a botnet. It's basically very similar. I mean, of course, that's oversimplifying the process, but that's just, in my mind, that's kind of like the best way to describe it to somebody who may not understand a lot of information technology or cybersecurity in general. So
can I tell you a joke that I thought of related to this?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Back in the days before the internet, when we had phones only, that's how we communicated with people. Kids from my era and older than me would use the telephone to do telephone pranks. And so you would, there was one where you would call the owner of the drugstore, the local drugstore, and ask, do you have Prince Albert in a can? And back in those days, I don't even know what it was. It was tobacco. Prince Albert, I don't know if it was chewing tobacco or what it was, but it was in a can. So Prince Albert in a can. And then he'd say, yes, I do. And then a little bit later, somebody else would call, do you have Prince Albert in a can? Yes. And they just flood him with a whole bunch of phone calls. And then finally, the person at the end of the line would say, do you have Prince Albert in a can? He'd say, yes. Well, let him out. And so basically it's interrupting his business with these phone calls. So it keeps him from, he might have had other customers he was dealing with or other things he needed to do, but it's just interrupting his business.
That's also a great way to describe it. So let's sort of just talk about the different phases that might take up or might implement a denial of service.
Okay.
So in order to do that in the basic process of that, pardon me, we have to talk about exploitation just a little bit. Exploitation is the process of identifying a specific vulnerability on a target host, throwing an exploit that can take advantage of that vulnerability, and it performing some action, depending upon whatever the action is that you're trying to do. In the event of the goal to obtain interactive access, you exploit, send a payload, that payload runs, you get interactive access, some type of a shell back, where now you can type on the local or the remote computer. In the event that that exploit does not get you access to the remote machine, let's just say, for instance, it might just completely destroy the machine or shut it down, and you might get like what they call BSOD, blue screen of death. The blue screen of death, of course, on a Windows machine is just that blue screen that has that sad face that says whatever your code is and then why they think it might be shut down. So that is a denial of service. So I've attacked that platform or that operating system, and I've been able to take it offline, if you will. That's a type of denial of service. Another type of denial of service might be in an application. If I can take an application and I can throw at it and I can overwrite something, or I can delete the database, and now that application itself doesn't work anymore. So, there's no longer capability for that application to work. You no longer can process whatever the service is that that application is supposed to be providing. You've denied access people to that service. It's a denial of service. So that's really the, some of the core, again, oversimplified methodologies of what a denial of service are. Now,
so basically, denial of service is attacking systems, businesses, so that people like me cannot access them. So I do not have access to their service.
Yeah, exactly right.
Trying to shut down their business.
It might, yeah, and that's true. If you have a denial of service, lots of times they might be politically driven. They might be financially driven. They might be driven by core values, for instance, like a lot of websites. Let's just say, for instance, in the United States right now, there are some websites that are promoting, Nazi regimes and neo-fascist concepts. Well, there's organizations and people attacking those platforms, preventing other people from accessing them or seeing them. If you might attack an ISIS or Al Qaeda website to prevent people from accessing that, that is as a core value belief that I don't want people to be able to access that. So I'm going to target it against a denial of service attack. Of course, then you have political. If you have a specific political party that doesn't want people being able to see or view the content on another person's website, then you attack it with a denial of service. You flood it with a bunch of packets and nobody can get there, or for whatever reason, whatever type of attack it is that you threw against it, that's also a denial of service attack. Now, a botnet or a botnet process is a DDoS. Now imagine the interrupting cow, one person throws an exploit and then it shuts it down. So that's a single denial of service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say, for instance, there's no exploit and you need, in order to flood it with packets, you need 5,000 cows. Now you have one cow doing something and 5,000 cows replicating exactly what that one cow is doing. And you're throwing an attack from multiple organizations, and you have a distributed network of machines throwing attacks at a specific target, if you will. And again, fall back on all the reasons why you would want to do that and implement those in the same way. There's no real difference. Can you obtain the end goal of shutting down the machine, if you will.
Okay, so, can I take do a little sidebar here for just a minute? So from a business's point of view, I mean, I'm thinking that most people are not going to attack me personally with a denial of service. I mean, there would be no reason to do that unless I was publishing some of this information that they wanted to suppress, and sure. I'm not. So I can't imagine. But so it's directed at businesses to disrupt their business or to disrupt their political ideologies or whatever it is that they're trying to promote, so that your ideology can have a better chance or whatever. So, but since it's all coming from the outside, I don't know of anything, and this is a question for you. What can a business do to protect itself from someone attacking them with a denial of service?
That's a great point. We're kind of getting into more advanced mitigation processes.
Okay.
Me being an offensive security person, I understand a lot of the mitigation processes, but teaching them is not going to be the easiest thing for me. But really, the primary way that an organization or business would do that. Let's just say, for instance, and this is I guess sort of another idea of what we talked about last time, man in the middle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say I have this IP address where all of my traffic routes to there. But this IP address is owned by an ISP, an internet service provider, and they have a circuit somewhere, and that circuit is hosting my IP address. This is an oversimplification, and I don't even think I can get into the nitty-gritty of exactly.
Okay.
But let's just say, for instance, somebody and all the traffic that goes through here then gets routed down to my infrastructure. And so in order to process a denial of service, you have to attack this particular IP address. And somebody's identified that this IP address links directly to this business. Well, what if you just take that circuit and that IP address as soon as that DDoS starts, and you shift it and you now put a different IP address and machine in this place, or you just reroute incoming traffic to that IP address or to a different IP address.
I think that's probably enough explanation about how that works just for a person like me. And it's nice to know that there are things that can be done, and that description made complete sense. So, but then when you start talking about the DDoS, or the distributed denial of service, where it's not just one computer attacking a company, but it might be 1,000, it could even be 1,000,000. And this is where the individual person like me could potentially be part of it, because this is where, I mean, how they do that is that they put their software, the bot, onto people's computers so that they have access to it. So they're using, 500,000 or 1,000,000 average people's computers to do these denial of service requests. And so how do I protect myself from that? I mean, the thought of somebody else controlling my computer without my knowledge, I don't like that. And
right. Yeah.
Does my regular antivirus software, does it catch those kinds of things and kill them?
Yeah, that's hard to know. I would say that for someone like me, I can get on a lot of different computers with antivirus on them, and with little worry. Antiviruses are getting better for sure, and they do shift and rotate a lot of their signatures. But let's talk about that for 1 second. We can go into signatures more advanced later. But a signature really is a known bad key, if you will, about what a specific bad virus or bot or malware might be. And that's how signatures work. There are certain types of heuristic-based activity that an antivirus can perform. If it's running this, or if it's using this part of memory or this type of encryption, then I can flag that and look at it. But if it's a process that's literally just calling out to the internet and makes it look like it's a regular piece of application that's not doing anything local on your local machine and has never been seen before, so there's no signature for it, it's going to be hard to find that.
So, so even if you got good antivirus software, in some cases they could still get it onto your machine.
I would say that's true. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways of doing that. If you, one of the primary ways that my team uses now is never actually putting any files on disk. So when you do that, you never put a specific file on disk, you run everything in memory. And what that might do, there are a bunch of like tool sets preloaded on a machine, on a Windows machine, that you can actually leverage to load a particular payload in memory and get it to run. So if you create a user register key that has the register key actually has a script to run, or not really a script, but it's just basically just a command. It runs a specific command to download and execute a PowerShell script, or to remotely. When I say download, what I mean is remotely load a PowerShell script and run it. You might
Remotely load, say that slower, remotely load a PowerShell
script and then run it. So instead of downloading the script on the machine itself, you might just load the PowerShell, what the code is in the PowerShell script, PowerShell being, it's kind of a programming language. It's also a scripting language on a local machine. It's just basically a bash type of, I'm using all the wrong words here, but basically it's a application on local Windows machines that provides access to everything on the machine, more advanced administrator type capabilities that allows network administrators to perform more advanced sysadmin network administration activities.
Okay.
And it can be leveraged to run specific type of malicious code without ever having to drop a file on the local machine. So you load all the code into memory, into your RAM, and then run that from within RAM. So you might be initiating your own process, or you might be just running that within a PowerShell process. You might be performing process hollowing, where you're injecting that code, process injection, where you're injecting your code into a different process, a bunch of different stuff like that. So there's all kinds of different ways in order to do that. You might be migrating to a different process, and so on and so forth.
Okay, I've lost you just a little bit.
Yeah,
and
sorry,
so,
we're getting really advanced. We don't need to actually get into the nitty gritty of that.
Right. But you're doing all that to try to find if there's any malware on your.
No, that's how you avoid antivirus.
That's how you avoid them. Okay.
Yeah. So there's methodologies and ways where, because your question was, are there antiviruses? Even my most advanced antiviruses are going to find that. There are lots of ways to identify that type of activity, and if you have an antivirus that's configured, in my opinion, properly, where you're only allowed to run specific processes that are on absolute path locations that are a specific hash, and so on and so forth. It has to be run not by system, it has to be run by the user, and you're only allowed to have these types of registry keys. If there's a new registry key, you have to delete it or disable it, and so on and so forth. There's a bunch of different things you can do and implement it, but the probability of risk for a local machine is so low that everyone doesn't really want to go through and do all that.
Yeah.
So they say, well, if somebody, this is going to take me 10 hours to configure this AV, and I don't even have any idea what I'm doing.
Right.
So it's going to take me longer than that now. It's going to be a huge headache. So would I prefer to go through this whole headache, or would I prefer someone just to use my computer as one of 500,000, bots? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I have a computer problem, I always try to keep in good contact with somebody here in Wichita who can do a good job working on computers. So I usually, if I'm having a problem, I take it to them and have them check it out completely. And I know there are other people that do that just on a regular basis.
Right.
And so if you take it to a computer shop, the types of things that they do with it, will they check your machine out more clearly? So if you have a one of these bots on your computer, will they find it, and then when they give it back to you, you're no longer one of these zombies that can be used by some?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer too, because the answer is not always yes. I mean, if an AV can't find it, and say you have the most advanced AV on the market, and it can't find it, and you take it to one of these local guys, no, they're not going to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they might be able to go through and run a whole bunch of diagnostics on what registry keys do you have, why do you have these, are they tied? I mean, there's a lot of research. There's hours and hours and hours and hours of research that would go into scrubbing every single process, who owns it, why is it there, is there executable, or is the process registered or signed by a specific trustworthy organization, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not as comforting as I hoped it would be. I was hoping there was a way that you could know that you're completely free, completely clean from these sorts of things. But
yeah, if that were the case, cybersecurity professionals wouldn't have a job. So, I mean, you would just implement this one single thing, and now you're good forever, and all of us have to go learn how to farm or something.
okay.
Yeah.
So they can only use your computer if they've got that software, the malware installed when your computer is running.
Correct. I think that's correct. I mean, you're asking specific words using different types of terminology, but if you're saying installed, it may not necessarily need to be installed. It might just need to be on the machine and configured to run in a certain way. And then if the machine is running, what does that mean? Is it in hibernation mode? Can specific applications still run in hibernation mode? Maybe. It's possible. It just kind of depends on how it's configured and what it's doing. So,
okay. So if your computer is just put to sleep, it might still be able to run.
Right. Maybe. You know, I would have to look at what the configuration settings are of being put to sleep. You know, are no applications running when it's put to sleep?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really kind of what's built into there. I mean, we sort of talked about distributed denial of service, or DDoS, and you alluded to the fact, based on your initial question, that a zombie is one of those 500,000 or 1 million
Yes.
machines that might be incorporated into there. I would say too that just sort of add here as we're talking about it, that the idea that you need all of these different types of applications, you need a whole bunch of, so there's only specific people that are using DDoS botnets, if you will, or botnets to do different stuff. When in reality, again, that's not true, because they have an entire industry called botnet for hire. So somebody might configure or install a bunch of different zombies and then make that botnet available to anyone who wants to pay a certain price for it. And so now you say, hey, I'm, whatever it is, I'm International Energy Organization 1000 and International Energy Organization 1005 in my remote country is about to bid on this or is about to do this, and I just need to make sure that they don't, or I'd like to prevent people from using their business anymore. So I'm gonna pay $1 million over to here to use this botnet for a week and attack this, International Energy Organization 1005. Of course, I'm oversimplifying this again, but in the event that a specific organization, a nation state country, somebody with political affiliations or moral beliefs, whatever it is, if they want to purchase a botnet, they are out there for purchase.
Well, I think for this particular series, simple is what we need and simple is what we want. I mean, the whole idea for this is that somebody like me that has just a little bit of computer knowledge can gain a little bit more computer knowledge.
Right.
And so if there's people that want to go a lot deeper into it, you have paths available for that. You have courses that they can sign up for at some point in time.
Right.
And go lots and lots deeper. This is just kind of scratching the surface of cybersecurity world. And so to wrap up, the denial of service or distributed denial of service is something that's still used a great deal for all kinds of different reasons. Some of them political or ideological reasons. Other reasons might be just for interruptions of service in the competitive world, to have this person not able to use their business website so that some other person's website might gain prominence.
Cool.
And so anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the question. Thanks for the good conversation. And we will see you we'll see you next week for our next conversations with Cliff.
All right, sounds great. Thanks a lot.